Welcome to Winning with the Burns, a podcast for highly ambitious people who have a burning desire to learn what it takes to win at a high level. Hey guys, thanks for joining us again today with Winning with the Burns. You know, today, Nick, we get the honor to really have one of our great mentors on with us today.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, the theme of today's podcast is core values. And the gentleman that is going to be talking about core values today is, you know, someone that I just absolutely admire. Number one, I'm thankful for to be in business with. One of the most humble men in our industry, but make no mistake about it, he's one of the biggest go-getters there ever was. And so, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to talk with Mr. Barry Clarkson. He's going to be synced in live from Lynchburg, Virginia, and we're just going to be having a conversation today. So, Barry, thank you for jumping on with me and JB today. Kind of give the elevator talk of, you know, how you got into business, how long you got into business, and, you know, what's going on right now with you.
All righty. Well, first of all, Nick and JB, thanks for the invite, man. I love what you guys have going on in your business, and one of my favorite subjects to talk about, we'll get into that in a moment, is core values. But this is my 42nd year in the business. I was literally in April of 1980 skipping a psychology class in college. Was at a restaurant having a 99-cent breakfast. So some people out there with gray hair will remember Sambo's. And a buddy of mine, we were sitting there talking about getting a summer job. That summer, I was a laborer, JB and Nick, for a brick mason company. And my friend was working with a painting company, right? So that's the way we got started. But there was a gentleman that got stood up in the booth next to us, overheard our conversation, came over and gave us a card and invited us to a meeting the following Tuesday night at a local bank. I remember it was the Community Bank of Forest on the second floor at 7 o'clock. And being our prospects for employment were not that high, both of us showed up. And it was an opportunity meeting. And at 20 years old, I got to tell you, man, the guy did a great job, because I was fired up after listening to him for an hour. And, you know, that summer, studied, ended up getting my insurance license, worked part-time. I was still in college playing baseball at the time, and ended up making a decision to go full-time in January of 1982. And have done nothing in my working life other than this business since. Currently CEO of Equis Financial, a managing partner with Integrity Marketing Group, which I take a lot of pride in. What an incredible company out there, and just humble to be a partner with Integrity under Brian Adams and his team's leadership. And I think the future is brighter than it's ever been today.
You know, Barry, I've always heard that story about, you know, you sitting in there having breakfast, but I didn't know. I thought that you showed up to meet a guy for breakfast, that he was sharing the opportunity with you. I didn't know that the guy got stood up. You talk about sequences. You talk about being at the right place at the right time. You know, how I mean, if, you know, again, we can do a whole, you know, bio on you down the road, but, you know, what you've done in the business, I mean, it didn't just happen. I mean, you call it by chance, but you were there. You know, I heard this morning. It says success is about the interaction of being intentional and lucky. You know, you were being intentional about getting a summer job, right? You wanted to get a summer job, but look, you got lucky when that guy didn't show up for his meeting in his right place at the right time. But what we're going to talk about today, Barry, is core values. You know, the core values here at Equis mean a lot to me personally. You know, I've shared with you before, they didn't mean a lot to me until I got fully engaged in the business. And so I want to talk, you know, candidly about, why you felt it was so important to implement core values. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing a lot of business that don't have a mission statement, that don't have core values. I'm going to kind of read some things. You can Google anything on the internet, and it talked about, asking about why are core values so important to a company. And one site said it helps ensure that all your teammates are working towards the same goals. Another one says it supports the company's vision. Another one says it shapes its culture. And then this last one, which I really like, it says it's principles that define your culture. And when I read the 6 values at Equis, to me, all of them are a fragrance of Barry Clarkson. So kind of share why it was important to even implement core values here at Equis.
Well, Nick, it's something that I take very seriously. I talked about my time in the business and how long I've been involved in the business. When the founders of Equis talked to me about joining the team, I know how tough it is to build something, right? And I really felt like, there are a lot of bodies out there, right? And so one of the beautiful things about when you're starting and building your organization and putting your coaches, your coaches together, right, is and let's again, I want to say it takes a lot of effort, right? I mean, it's something that you've got to be committed to. And I see so many people waste time, right? They spend the majority of their time working with the wrong people. And I was guilty of that. And so I really felt like it was important for our leadership team to have core values that would be their guiding light. I like to call it their North Star, right? They were people that were, they valued the same things that we valued, right? And, I think each of those 6 core values in itself could almost be standalone. A lot of people ask me, Nick, which of the core values do you think is most important? And it probably depends on the day and what I'm going through or dealing with. But each of those core values could be the most important. But together, you get a group of people that will embrace those core values, and they look for those in the people that they're building with. I think it is a formula for success, and it keeps you from wasting a lot of your time working with the wrong people.
That's the thing, folks. If you're listening hard, that's the thing called experience. Barry, 42 years in the business. When you partnered up with Rob Jones and Bill Martin in 2016, so Equis is really actually about 6 years old right now. Coming on, in January of this year, entering into its 7th year. But you have a lot of experience. You said something earlier about in order to build something, it's tough. It is absolutely tough to build something. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of commitment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go, if you're taking notes, guys, the core values here at Equis, the first one's attitude. And that's the one we're going to start out with initially is attitude. And Barry, what Webster's dictionary says about attitude is it's a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something. Me personally, I hear it all the time, heard it all the time growing up, playing sports, control your attitude. The only 2 things you can control is your effort and attitude. But man, 43 years old, been in the business 19 years, man, how true is that? That's one of the few things that I personally can control on a daily basis. Why was attitude one of the core values here at Equis?
Well, Nick, you just said it. And I was going to say this. There's so many things in business and in life that we do not control. But the one thing that we do control is how we're going to view the day when our feet hit the floor in the morning. It's easy to have a great attitude when things are going well, when the scoreboard is in favor of ourselves. But I got to tell you this, man, when you're building out there, 80% of the days probably you're facing challenges, right? And I think attitude is critical because I think everyone is always looking at you and how you respond to adversity, how you handle adversity. Are you going to pull the little white flag up and run home to mama? Or are you going to be a man or a woman with a spine? And I believe, you know what, we're not in a popularity contest. What we do is serious. Number one, we have, I got to tell you something, man. Our committed obligation to serving the public, to sitting down and across that kitchen table and giving counsel to them about what is going to probably be one of the most horrific, sad days in their life, takes responsible, serious people, right? And I think it's important that when you're in this business, right? We live on a commission income. And I think, number one, it's critically important to be forthright and 100% honest all the time. When I talk about attitude, if you're helping someone build a business, you know what, man, you can't be a whiny crybaby, right? Every time something doesn't go to suit you. Attitude's critical, man. And I want to tell you this, Nick. I don't know that attitude is everything, but I know this in building, it's a bunch, right? It's a bunch. And that was a key value of ours going into this. We're finding people that would get up and put a smile on their face regardless of what happened at home, right? On the way to work, news they received. And I believe it's critical to be a leader of people, that you've got that ability and strength to control your actions and your attitude.
I think it goes even deeper. When I first would hear about the word attitude, I think positive or negative. You see somebody, man, they got a good attitude. They're in a good mood. But I think it also goes deeper. It's the attitude of, I'm going to show up every day. It's an attitude of, I'm going to give my all. It's an attitude of, I'm going to help as many people as I can. It's an attitude of, I'm going to win. I'm going to be the best that I can be. But you could get really deep with attitude. And I'm the same, Barry. It's like, which one is my favorite? It like you said, it depends on the day. It depends on what you're going through at that time. So, JB, anything on attitude?
No, I love it. I've heard Barry Clarkson go through core values so many times live at conferences and everything, and I've already got a page full of notes just on that one core value. So if you're riding down the road, you need to pull over, get a pen out, because this is critical to your business, and whatever you're doing is having that attitude. And to your point, positive or negative, it's really about just showing up. Am I going to have the attitude to show up every day? To what Barry said, even though I had bad news, even though this hit me today, I'm still going to show up.
You could take these core values, Barry, and put it with any company. You could take these core values and put it with any team. You could take these core values and instill it within your family. It's so critical. The principles win in anything that you do. So all right. So attitude. That's the first one. The second one we're going to talk about is ownership. Taking ownership, and the definition of ownership by Webster says it's a state or act of possessing something. You think about taking ownership of a home, taking ownership of a car. Guys, my opinion of taking ownership is owning your situation, but Barry, this is a whole that we could go really deep with this. Why was ownership one of the core values at Equis?
Well, hey, Nick, if I'm going to straighten up a little bit when I talk about ownership, because the context of what we were talking about was owning your situation where you are, right? Until you do that, it's not about owning your business or owning a home or owning a car. You've got to own where you are and look in the mirror, whether it was fair or not fair, and take 100% ownership, because until you do that, you're never going to be willing to go through what it takes to change to get better, right? And I mean, you see it here, listen, you see it here at Equis, right? I'm sure you've seen it all your life. Most people, when they're not growing, right, when things aren't going the way they want them to go, right, instead of looking in the dead-gum mirror and taking 100% ownership of the situation, see, that's what leadership's also about, right? And people, they don't want to be around somebody, nor are they going to follow somebody that's always making excuses, right? When I talk about building and being tough, right? Listen, I love it. And I think if you talk to most leaders across America today, they love it that it's tough, right? It's supposed to be tough because it's so rewarding, right? I mean, the stakes are so high for those individuals out there that have the ability to help create great distribution models for our insurance companies, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. And so, there's a lot of opportunity for us that are able to go out there and do that. But I believe it starts with owning every situation that you're in. All of us can talk about, somebody's done this to us or did that to us. And, we can talk about our third grade teacher that, made fun of us or something because we misspelled a word. I mean, we can go back and it's amazing the crap people drag around, right? But I think going from being a child to an adult, we're supposed to shed a lot of that. And we have an opportunity living in the greatest country on the planet to be able to go out there, Nick, and to affect change, right? But I got to tell you something. It starts right here with us, and because change is tough, right? I don't care if you're changing, if it's you're trying to shed a few pounds, if you're changing your business model, if you're wanting to change some things going on in your spiritual life, right? Your physical life, whatever. Change is difficult. And so ownership to me, I said I didn't have a favorite. Dadgummit, maybe that's my favorite and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's the one thing that bites most people. And sadly, Nick, I don't know if it's 8.5 out of every 10 people or 9 people out of every 10, but it's a bunch that I think because they don't do that, right? And they're pointing the finger at somebody. And when you point your finger at somebody, you got 3 pointing back at you. Nick, it keeps a lot of people from going out and winning at a level they could win at in business. Maybe whether it could be in their family life, right? Or we can go on and on. But I believe it all starts with you, and I love that.
You said owning your own situation, owning your situation where you are. That just hits me and JB right in the face because we were there. We were there, a little over 18 months ago, and we had been in this business for a while and had some success, and we got hooked up with you guys. Last year. I mean, we came on board in early 19 to do final expense. It was a complete flop. And then we were just in a situation where, we had some money coming in, we were successful, and, adversity really hit. We were sitting around waiting for our ship to come in and weren't owning our situation, Barry. That's what we were not doing. We weren't owning our situation. We had to look in the mirror and say, hey, this didn't happen to me. It happened for me. And man, it pushed us into the greatest opportunity we've ever had in this business here with you guys and what's going on right now. And it's just, change is tough, but it starts with this core value, is you got to have some self-awareness, number one, but then it starts with taking ownership. When you take ownership of your situation, you look in the mirror and you feel fat, right? Go to the gym. Hey, I need to get myself together. Nick Burns had to do that here a while back, and I had to get in a routine of making some changes. If financially, if you're not where you are, I have an insurance license. I can go out and help families and I can make money, So it's owning your own situation and looking in that mirror. By the way, there's a great book. I don't know if you're listening, go grab it. Extreme Ownership. Arguably one of the best leadership books I've ever read. It's written by 2 Navy SEALs. Chapter 2 will rip you. There's no bad teams, only bad leaders. And it's just a wake up call for me and JB all the time. Is we're never pointing the pointing the finger at somebody else. Now I say never. We have, but we'll quickly call each other out. Hey, if Nick's feeling sorry for himself that day, JB calls Nick out. If JB's feeling sorry for himself, JB calls Nick out. Nick calls his brother out. But JB, anything on ownership?
Barry, when I think of people that lack ownership, I think of a palms up kind of guy. You've seen them on the football field, the baseball field. It's like when something happens, they throw their palms up like, I didn't do it. But, as a leader, you have to look at it as when things go right, it's a we mentality. But when they go wrong, it's an I. What do I need to do to change the trajectory of the business that I'm in? What do I need to do as a leader to change things if they're not going the way they should be going, right?
I do think it's important. And Nick, I think you bring a great point out is that I think one of the things is you're starting to develop your team, having a running buddy, but also having someone that is going to be honest with you 100% of the time. Yeah. And I think that that's a great thing you and JB do. And I think everybody needs that. I mean, everyone needs that in your life because none of us are perfect, right? And all of us wake up, we're human beings. We're not going to deny our humanity, right? And human beings have emotions and all of us fall short. I think that's something that, a lot of people ought to draw comfort to. None of us are perfect at what we do. I can guarantee you Barry Clarkson it. And, I need some people to shake my tree up once in a while. And I've got people around me and surrounded myself with people that I depend on and want them to do that. Right. And I think it's critically important. And I just wanted to point that out, Nick, because you brought attention to it. And, none of us are kings, right? I'm telling you, man, surround yourself with people that are going to be honest with you. And I think that's not a core value, Nick, but it's important when you're doing this thing.
There's too much at stake. You said it earlier. There's way too much at stake to not be honest with somebody you're in business with. We're coming back and getting back in the game since April of last year. Our mentality is so different with new agents now. It would be like massaging them along the way, helping them along the way. We're brutally honest from up front. We're telling them, hey, this is going to be tough. If you don't do it this way, it's not going to work, and I think that comes with experience. But all right, so we hit on attitude, we hit on ownership, respect, and when I Googled it, Webster, it said a feeling of admiration for someone or something elicited by their ability. So if you respect somebody by what they do, but it also, I think it goes a little deeper. So, respect, why is that a core value?
I think, Nick, if you look at any of our canvases where we have our core values listed, respect shows up as number one, and it's for a reason. You've got to respect the people that you're working with, and they've got to respect you. And candidly, I think everything starts there, right? If there's a starting point, it is respect. And man, I tell our leadership team this all the time. A lot of us have been blessed way beyond what we deserve. And yes, we've worked hard and so forth and all of that. But, I tell our people this all the time. We whether you're in a hotel at a conference or you're at a training, I expect everybody to, and I mean this. I don't just say this for those that know me best, know how much I mean this. I want you to show the same respect to the person waiting on you and serving you a meal, or bringing in a water jug to the conference, filling up, the water container or coffee or whatever. Don't you treat them 1 ounce different than what you treat me or anybody else. In fact, candidly, I would rather you go out of your way to show them more love and more respect. And I think it tells you a lot about someone if you just observe them, Nick and JB. Just observe people. Observe someone when they're having a meal, right? And maybe the waiter or the waitress comes up and is taking an order or asking if they want a refill on their drink. Notice how that person responds to them, right? Is it a hey you, or are they addressing them by their name, right? Because I got to tell you something. It tells you everything you need to know. Tells you everything you need to know if that's somebody you want on your team. So to me, respect is number one, and it all starts there. And I could talk a lot about that because I see so many people screw that up. And sooner or later, it's going to bite you if you're a phony about respect. It will bite you, and it will show its ugly head.
Well, we've had plenty of dinners with you. I've seen you interact, and that's not lip service coming from you. That's how you are. That's who you are. That's your identity. That's how you treat everyone you come in contact with, whether it's your boss at Integrity or if it's a brand new agent. You treat everybody the same. JB, anything on respect?
No, I love what you say, Barry. You can tell a lot by somebody, how they treat, and I was reading a story, and, maybe it's made up, maybe it's not, but it was really cool that these two guys were interviewing for the same position. Well, they had dinner that night with the executive, and this one guy was so knowledgeable about the line he was going in. And the other guy just kind of sat back, took a back seat, didn't get to speak much about what he knew. But when they walked out, he dismissed the guy who talked the whole time at the dinner table. And he says, but I know so much more than this guy. He said, but when the waiter came, you ignored him. You treated him like crap. You did this. What are you going to do with the team members that you're going to lead? And so therefore, the guy who respected the waiter, who, acknowledged them by name, he got the job because he said, that's the guy I want on my team. That's the people that I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who's not a fake. Barry, you always teach us you can sniff a fraud out from a mile away. And you want to know how somebody really respects other people as a human, take them out to dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. Barry, you're big. Barry played college baseball at Liberty. We send texts back and forth about, college football and athletics as a whole. But, you hear stories all the time of college coaches going and recruiting kids and watching how they treat their parents after a game, watching how they treat their teammates, watching how they treat their coach. And, I've heard stories of they go to offer them a scholarship. That's when they go to that game to offer them a scholarship, and they see how they treat somebody else, and they pull that scholarship back, because that's so important, because adversity's coming. Trials are coming. They're around the corner, make no mistake about it, and it's like, how are you going to, if you can't handle it now, how are you going to handle it when it really gets tough? And that leads us into, if I had to choose a favorite, this one would be my favorite. Toughness.
Yeah, I knew you were going there, Nick Burns. I knew you were going there, man.
So here's what it says. There's like three different, you Google what a definition of something, it gives you like one or two. This one goes like 3 or 4 deep. So it says the state of being strong enough to withstand adverse conditions. Now the next one says the quality of being difficult to cut or chew. Obviously you think about a steak or something hard, but hey, I look at it in another way. It also says this, the ability to deal with hardships to cope in difficult situations? Barry, the floor is yours on toughness.
Well, hey, if we start, the scripture talks about that, right? That man is full of troubles, right? And so it is true when you're working, with people. And it always, I just believe this with everything in me, is that, when you are assembling or you're working to put together the organization, and I know I said this earlier, but I do think it bears repeating, right? Is that when you're working with others, I think most people want to find out how you handle adversity, right? How you handle a tough day, how you handle tough news, right? Because number one, it's part of life. And one of the things about being a leader is not only handling you, but it's being involved with your people. I believe on a personal level, a lot of, I know we've not gotten to that core value yet, and I'm not going to even say the word, but we will here in a moment. But I remember my leader back in the 80s, and I hung on to every word this gentleman said. But he talked about, man, you can't go win with a bunch of dead-gum mental sissies, right? In fact, I think he called them mental wee-wees, right? But you know what? That's true. You need people that are strong, that are mentally strong, that take a lot of personal pride in being tough. And candidly, in the world we live in today, I don't see a lot of that. I think there are a lot of, this culture in so many places. And I think your kids see that, participation trophies, right? And I'm not much on participation trophies, right? I love people that go out there and work their rear ends off. I've got a 9-year-old granddaughter, and she's in gymnastics, right? And she works most days about 4 hours of training a day. And she just had a big event 2 days ago. It's the reason I'm bragging on her. I'm not going to bring any video out, I promise you. But I was telling my wife, she finished number one out of 139 kids, and it was, but I loved it because I know a lot of those kids didn't work 4 hours a day, right? I mean, every time you see her, she's doing handstand, and I think that toughness, man, I think you got to love what you're doing. I think you got to embrace it. But again, I think it's one of those things, Nick and JB, that we have control over. And I don't think we talk enough about it. And I know we're going to start talking a lot more about it than we have been as we go in 2023. This has been a tough year for most of the people that we work with in middle income America, right? But I think that toughness is a must. Number one, whether you're a personal producer or whether you're a leader, that's out there building and creating distribution for our insurance carriers. Regardless of it, you've got to be tough if you're gonna be in business today.
Barry, you talk about toughness and what is it? Being mentally tough. I ran this past Sunday night. I did a 10K, and I am not a runner. I don't know why I decided to do it. I had a friend of mine says, "Why don't you do this with me?" So I signed up. Well, halfway through, I got a cramp in my side. I'm like, this sucks. And they looked at me and said, "You just need to learn to deal with it. It's tough. You just got to learn to deal with it because the finish line's coming close." And I think for a lot of people, Barry, bad things happen, but it's that mental toughness that pushes them through that storm because it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as good as you think it is, right?
Yep, it's so true, man. It is. It is true, and I think a lot of toughness that you're talking about it is pushing yourself. Business is very much like that, right? There may be people listening to us today, right? We talked about ownership, and then one of the things that we talked a lot about at Air Company for 6 years, right? It's probably a boring topic, but I believe that debt in our country today is one of the most debilitating things out there outside of health challenges, right? And it's easy to get into, but what you find out, there's got to be a starting point, and maybe it's paying $100 or $200, right, toward that credit card, but it's starting, right? And I think you've got to give yourself, JB, I think you got to set some small goals to start winning and get a taste of what it feels like. Right. And I know everybody doesn't go out there and start at a 10K, right? I guarantee you started running your first mile, right? Or running 2 or 3 and you kind of worked your way up to that. But I do think that's important. And, this business of toughness, JB, we talk a lot about this at Equis Financial. I believe you've got to look yourself in the mirror on Friday night or Saturday night, whenever it's the end of your week. And I think you've got to be proud of the reflection, right? You've got to be proud of your effort. Because of course you're going to have adversity, right? Of course, you're going to have cancellations. You're going to have someone quit, right? Nick, somebody's going to hit the transfer portal that you weren't expecting, right?
Yeah.
Of course, right? But, at the end of the day, man, you've got to prepare yourself physically, I believe. I think you've got to prepare yourself mentally. And I think you've got to do that every single day. But I don't think there will ever be anything that you get more joy from, right? More satisfaction from, that when you're able to look just you, right? Maybe you're in a bathroom, it's just you, and you look in the mirror and you're proud of you, right? And I think when you get to that point that you're proud of you, you're proud of the way you conducted yourself, you're proud of your effort, you're proud of all of those things. I think that's the first part, or the first key to start attracting the right people that embrace your core values.
That's good. That's good. Toughness kind of, it all intertwines with the first 3 we've talked about. Being mentally tough is taking ownership of your situation. Being mentally tough is respecting yourself. Being mentally tough is having an attitude of mental toughness. I'm choosing to be tough today. I'm choosing to, not let what she said about me affect me. It's Grant Cardone. I'm not saying I agree with this comment, but Grant Cardone says, he said, you're loving me one day or you're hating me the next day, but both days I'm making money. That's his attitude. Again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but again, he has that sort of attitude. But mental toughness, especially in our business, in the financial service business that we're in, I believe mental toughness is arguably the biggest attribute for those that win at a high level, because our business is not based on talent. I really believe our business, Barry Clarkson has talent, a Brian Adams has talent, a Rob Jones has talent. There's so many people that have talent, but if you don't have that mental toughness combined with that talent, you're in trouble. How many great athletes have you seen? Come on, how many guys did you grow up with that, they should have done this, but they didn't because they gave up, because they weren't willing to put in the effort, but, mental toughness is arguably my favorite.
Ken, I want to say something, and I think it's important, Nick, for the people that are listening to this podcast with you guys. Again, when I reflect back over the last 42 years, right? And man, there's a lot of water that's gone under the bridge over the last 42 years. But I think about January 1st of 1982. I was 21 years old and made the decision to go full time in this business. And man, I was scared to death, right? My wife worked at a grocery store, and, we had a daughter that was born with spina bifida in September of 1982. And my wife could no longer work. She had to stay home, man. And you wake up, I mean, I can still think about those feelings in my stomach every morning, right? Getting ready to go out there and make a living on a commission income at that time, 22 years old. But I want to say this, and I think it's critical. And you've said it, be 100% honest and transparent. But I had a leader that every time he talked, he said, for the first 5 years in business, it seems like it's one false start after the other. And the first 5 years, Nick, it isn't anything but just pure survival from one day to the next. And here's the reason that I appreciate that so much. There's so many people out there that blow smoke and mirrors and talk about, you're going to do this and do that. And I tell people this at Air Company. The only thing I can promise you is a hard time, right? Because you're getting ready to be challenged like you've never, ever been challenged before. And I have no idea how you're going to handle that. So if you want me to start telling you how great things are going to be, you're not going to hear it from me, because we'll talk after 5 years. But I think the right people want to hear that. I think they want to hear truthful, straight, transparent conversation. And because here's what you're respecting, and I looked at it this way, that my leader respected me enough. You give me the facts. You respect me enough to make my own mind up about whether I want to work that hard or put myself in the position to. But for goodness sakes, don't tell me 99% of the truth and leave out the 1%. Respect me that much. And I see people trying to build companies and bring people on, and all they're doing is just telling about how great everything is. And that's not life, right? And I don't care what it is. It isn't, I hear football coaches all the time talk about, man, it's tough to win a college football game. Well, I got a news for the college football coaches. It isn't only tough to win a college football game, it's just tough to win in business in general, right? And but I think that is an important part in our communication with people. Let's look people in the eye and be 100% transparent 100% of the time. And I found out when we did that, when you do that, you attract the right people that want to be a part of a leader that's doing that consistently.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Before I met you, I've never shared this with you. Before, talking about toughness and mental toughness, I know you shared about, Tiffany, having spina bifida. I remember a gentleman that connected us with you, John Kite, shared with us a story at Tiffany's wake. He said, he went to Tiffany's wake and he talked about how you were, a man, had just lost his daughter, how you were with everybody that came to the wake, how you were going and shaking everybody's hand. How are you doing? You put the onus on somebody else. You were, that's how mentally tough Barry Clarkson is. And we're not even talking about business. We're talking about losing a child, who you are. I told you this before, Barry, I'm thankful, for, all the business hardships you've been in. And we could go one after another. I mean, even when you started Equis, you guys had a crazy situation that took place a couple years into it, with your contracts and you pushed through, you pushed through with it, but we're thankful for you going through the stuff you've been through, because we can all benefit from it. You can tell us the truth, you can be brutally honest with us about what to expect. But this next one, Barry, I do, if arguably mentally toughness, when I think of Barry Clarkson, I think about mental toughness, but this one is either right there or right above it. And it's humility. Barry, you are one of the most humble men that I know, not only in this business, but that I know personally. You've had so much success in this business, yet you're one of the most humble guys. You could toot your own horn. You could do your own podcast, right? And just, blow Barry Clarkson up, which I think we need to, because people need to hear from you. But you're one of the most humble men I know. And when you Google humility, it says a modest or low view of one's own importance. A modest or low view of one's own importance, humbleness. When I hear that, I hear Barry Clarkson. Why did you choose humility?
Well, humility was actually, when we started our company, we would have a theme every year, right? That we started having some people. We were really blessed, man. Our first year, we did, I forget the exact, I think it was $8.9 million in paid premium. And of course, that represents how many families we were able to help and put insurance on. In their second year, we went from 8.9 million to 27 million, right? And so we had tremendous growth in 2017. And we had a lot of our people start financially, maybe, really doing better than probably they've ever done in their life. And I see so many people, start thinking that it's all about them, right? They forget where they came from. And, I guess, Nick and JB, humility is an easy one for me because I struggled for so many years in business. And when things did turn and the tide did turn, I was just so thankful, man. And I've never, ever taken that for granted. And I've also found that through that, it wasn't about Barry Clarkson. It was about, having great agents and great leadership around us. And I just always viewed it that way. We talked about being honest. I know me, right? And, I know my shortcomings and I candidly, man, I know how blessed I've been and our family and just how thankful we are. I challenge, I don't know what it is about our industry, but it is an industry that I think's got some of the largest egos in it, Nick and JB, that I've witnessed and seen. But man, I think when people start thinking it's about them and feeling like they need to post on Facebook or social media every move they're making, and telling us what they had for breakfast or the car they just purchased. Man, you know what? I know there's different ways to motivate, but man, all that crap just turns me off, right? So I think you have to be careful. And I heard Brian Adams say this, probably one of the first one of the first things he told me when I met him is ego kills. Ego kills. Arrogance kills, right? Because no one long-term wants to be around it, right? That's the thing. You may be intimidated by some leader and you may put up with it for a little while, but long-term, no one wants to stomach some arrogant, right? And so I think it's critically important to be humble, to be thankful, to be gracious, and to realize that the world doesn't evolve just around you. But take all of that energy and pour it into your organization and to your people.
With humility, though, I think a lot of times, when you hear it's a low view of one's own importance. That's true. But I think a lot of times, you can't see me, but Barry, you raise humility up high, and then in the right hand, you raise, you lower confidence. that creates somebody that's very passive. It's the combination of both of them together going head to head. You've got to have confidence combined with humility. You are one of the most bold leaders I've ever met when it comes to making a decision, saying, all right, hey, we're moving, we're doing this. You've got to have confidence, but it is combined with that humility. JB?
Well, confidence is you can deliver, Barry, and that's why you're confident when you make a decision. One thing you always said is, a good leader's not afraid to call a shot. Whether the shot's good or bad, a good leader's not afraid to call a shot, and that's the confidence inside of you. That's not the ego. The ego is just talk. When people talk about ego, it's just that guy's just talking. But when you're confident, you can be very humble because you're staying hungry, because you're grateful for what comes your way. You're grateful for the opportunity, and you realize that sometimes you didn't do it because of you. You did it because the people you surrounded yourself with, and that's about to lead into our next one, but you did it because you had help along the way, and it wasn't just you accomplishing those things.
Hey, well, JB, humility has nothing about being a doormat, and it doesn't mean you're not supposed to have swagger and confidence, right? That has nothing, and people, I think, confuse that sometimes, right? Yeah, you better be confident as a leader. You better be confident and bold in what you do. We're never going to, 100% of the plays that we make or decisions that we make, I can tell you, are not going to be right? If you're trying to grow, right, you're trying to stretch the boundary of where you've been, right? And, it is tough. And some of the things you're going to, they're going to work. Some of them aren't going to work. Nick and I, Nick, you said it, man, during college football, we're sitting there texting each other, right? Most of the plays of the brightest offensive minds in the game today do not work, right? But they're going to have 3 or 4 in the course of 60 minutes that do work, and the people that are able to do that are going to win the game. And those guys go on to be able to make millions of dollars as a football coach. But think of, so again, don't confuse humility as being a doormat or walking around with your chin in your soup all the time, right? That's not what we're talking about. But be thankful, be gracious, be confident, and leave the arrogance at home, man. Right? And I find a lot of people, especially with the males, they're arrogant at the office because they can't be at home.
Yeah.
Right. So, listen, man, humility is a big one. I know we've talked about it enough, but I do think it's important.
All right. Last, but definitely not least, relationships. It says the state of being connected, the way in which 2 or more people or groups regard and behave towards each other. Barry, relationships.
Well, I think, as you've already said, how intertwined the core values are. But at the end of the day, whether you are a personal producer that's going to go out and build your business, make your living, relationships are critical, because no one is going to, number one, do business with you, or they're not going to follow you if you don't have a relationship with them, right? And so all of those other core values, I think, kind of end up on the relationship plate. And I think it's important. And I think, number one, man, you've got to get to know people as people, right? I believe that with everything in me. I think relationships, a lot of it from a leadership standpoint, are loving people when they least deserve it, right? You can't just love them when they're doing well, right? And I think, so many people out there, Nick and JB, man, I think if we took a poll, right, most people feel like someone that they've looked up to, that's been important to them, they've had a relationship problem, right? Somebody's dumped on me. And I know I'm this way. So I understand that earning trust, right? Earning trust is important and it's difficult. And I think that being consistent in your emotions and not being all over the planet, not being too high or too low. Nick or JB, I think you just referenced that. I think being consistent in your emotions, I think it's important for people to know what they're going to get every time they're in your presence, right? You know, you can't be a jerk one day and then be the greatest guy in the world the next day. And I think that's one of the foundations that whether you've had a good day or a bad day, I want you to know that the relationship you can come to me, and I want to promise you something. I think it's important to sit down and tell people this, whether you like it or not, right? I want the kind of relationship that I can be 100% honest with you every day, and you don't take it personal and get mad at me, right? Because I tell people this. You've heard me say this. I coach tough. I coach hard, right? I don't know how to be passive when I'm talking about something that is as important as your career, as your family, as your longevity, right? I want, I want the upper, the side of the business or the financial or why you're doing, I want it to work out. And I'm willing to get in there and we're going to fight together. We're going to have some good days. We're going to have some laughing days and some crying days. But I want you to know I'm committed. I'm the guy that's not going to quit on you. And I think, and listen, I want to say this, Nick and JB, don't say things like that unless you mean it.
Unless you mean it, yeah. Yeah.
Don't say it unless you mean it, right? Because words are cheap. And I think relationships are built over time. I don't think it comes quick. I don't think it comes easy. And maybe, Nick and JB, of the 6 core values, maybe relationships is the most difficult of all of the 6 to build and to maintain.
Amen. Amen. One of the mistakes that we've made in the past in business with relationships is feeling like you've got to be friends with everybody in the business. And, I'm 43 now and I've had to learn the hard way, I don't need any more close friends. I have a certain select few close friends. I'm good. You know what I mean? Because I've always been told if you can count on your hand, the amount of close friends that you have, you're blessed. And I think if you got 2, Barry, you're super blessed. If you have two true confidants, in life. But that's the mistake we've made. Yeah, that's the mistake we've made is like thinking you've got to be best friends with somebody. Because when you grow, your time, your energy, your efforts are spread out even more. I've got 5 kids. I have to give them time as well. But when times come and you're really close with somebody, and adversity hits, they get emotional and you have ill will towards you. But one thing you've taught us is you can have those relationships with everybody that you're in business with, but you don't have to be their best buddy. You've made it very clear. I'm not here to be your best friend, right? I'm here to help you win in business. I'm here to help you become financially free. And you set that tone from the beginning here at Equis. And, you talked about earning trust. Man, I've read recently where trust equals speed. Trust equals speed. When Barry Clarkson tells me something, I don't have to think about it. I don't have to, verify, right? I take it and I run with it because there's a trust there. Talk about how important it is, with those relationships, of not being somebody's best friend all the time.
Nick, I got to tell you this, and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people at our company about this, is that I don't know how you lead and be someone's best friend, right? I don't know that. And you know what? I think that that is it. Honestly, I could talk for the next hour about the subject from a leadership standpoint. I'm not going to, and you're saying as you roll your eyes and say, "Thank goodness," but no, you can't be someone's best friend, right? I mean, and be their leader, because leading is making tough decisions. It's calling tough shots, right? It is. It's it's just, I mean, I think leaders and friendships are different. One of the things I think back at a time in my life, which I was in my 20s and early 30s, when I think about this, and I've shared this with a few people, but the guy that led our company obviously was a people person, right? I mean, this individual was dynamic in so many ways, and created something, and that became one of the most recognizable names in our industry, and maybe even from a leadership standpoint. And the 12 years that he was at the company and I was at the company, I only saw him one time, okay, break bread, have a meal with any of us. And we did a lot of trips to Europe as incentive trips. We did a lot to some of the coolest places in the world. And Nick and JB, I guarantee you that he wanted to be out there on excursions and the things that we were doing, but he never allowed himself to do that, because he knew that he was our leader, right? And there may be a lot of people out there that do not understand that, but if you want to understand it, go in and build an organization and be a leader there, and you'll understand why. Doesn't mean that you're not friendly, but your job's not to be everyone's best friend. And I think that can be, candidly, I think that can be lethal or catastrophic in business if that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah, but you do such a great job of still forming relationships without, quote unquote, crossing that line. You do such a good job, because it's like you got to have that. Again, it goes back to one of the core values. Having that attitude is, I'm here to help you and your family win. We have an unbelievable platform here at Equis Financial for you to succeed. But it's going to be up to you. It's not going to be handed to you. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tough. But you form those relationships over time. And Barry, I'll tell you, I think we're almost an hour into this deal, and it feels like we just started. We could go on and on and on. Yeah. I can't thank you enough for your time today. I'm looking forward to going back and listening to this over. I mean, I wish I could, show you my notes. I got tons of notes from just listening to you. Barry, from me and JB both, thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for everything you've done for us personally in this business. Our best days here at Equis are ahead of us.
Absolutely, they are. Well, Nick and JB, number one, thank you. It's my honor and a privilege for me to be able to get on and to talk with you guys about something that's dear to me, and I think part of the Equis DNA, or certainly our core values. And I think it's, as I started out, it's been our North Star. And I think as we grow and continue to grow and build, that we make sure that we don't lose sight of the importance of what got us to this point. And that is attracting people that these values are key to them and part of their DNA. So, guys, thank you. Thank you for your leadership and what you mean to me personally and to so many people at our company. Thank you. It's been a privilege, been an honor.
Well, Barry, we can't thank you enough. We really appreciate it. And, take some of these, put them in your DNA, in your home life, in your business, whatever that looks like. And remember this, your net worth will never be larger than your net work. So go out, meet some people, shake some hands, see what kind of knowledge you can learn. We'll see you guys next week.